Alright, so I'm going to try to finish this video up. These two here, this is my overall project here, so I just kind of laid them out to kind of show you why I ended up going the way that I ended up doing. Hey YouTube, so I'm back today. Today I'm going to be doing a video about layering some dyes. This is going to be using a liquid dye, a solvent based. It's going to be mixed with lacquer thinner. I'm also using a Keda Dye Liquid Dye kit. It's a solvent based liquid dye. It's very concentrated. So I've gone ahead and I ended up mixing up some formulas ahead of time. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of the yellow into 6 ounces of the lacquer thinner. I have the blue at a 1/4 teaspoon ratio into 4 ounces of lacquer thinner. And I also have a diluted version here with 7 drops of blue into 2 ounces of lacquer thinner. Now this is the 7-drop formula is just going to be like a dilution mix, and you'll kind of see what I end up doing as I progress through some of this. I'm going to be making a bluish green, kind of a teal color, and I'm also going to be using a Spar Urethane because people are asking about using Spar Urethane. So I figured, well, this will be a good opportunity to cover a couple of things. So with that said, I'm just going to kind of get into this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be taking the 1/4 teaspoon of the yellow. I'm just drawing some of this up. I've let these dyes sit for I'd say about 20-30 minutes or so after I've mixed these up. So this is probably going to get kind of messy, but kind of bear with me. So I'm just going to apply this pretty generously. I'm actually making a colored backdrop. That's why these have an angle cut on here. So I thought, well, I have several of these done already, but I've been asked to give a demonstration about layering some of the dye colors using the liquid dyes. And actually, you get a lot more control when you do end up layering. So it's going to be a pretty interesting video, hopefully. I know I'm not the greatest presenter of some of this stuff, and I kind of tend to ramble quite a bit. And I apologize for some of that, but this is a fairly concentrated version of the yellow. You can end up going with a lighter mix, which would give it a lighter coloring, and that will also change the tone of the color that you're going to be getting. So basically, I'm going to let this dry a little bit, but just to give you kind of a little overview, what this is going to do is I'm going to end up having a bottom here, and this is going to be a backdrop. So this will be the backdrop piece here, and I have several of these strips cut, and they're going to be multicolored boards, something that's for demonstrations and things like that, some photography. So anyways, I'm going to give this a pretty good going over, a pretty good coating here. This looks pretty well done. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to probably put about 2 or 3 coats on here because I want a good yellow base. Probably don't need to do that many, but sometimes I end up going a little heavier than what I really need to, just for the purposes of the video. So I hope you guys kind of understand that as well. And so I'm going to let this dry out, and I'll come back once this is dried. I'll put the second, maybe third coat on is what I'll do. I'll put two more coats on, and then I'll come back. Okay, so this has had a chance to dry out. I've actually only put 2 coats on here. As for the color, in person it looks like it's a little more orange. It's not a whole lot of difference, but anyways, so this is just a little more concentrated. It's closer to an actual real amber color, but I think that with so much white in the light that it's washing the color out just a little bit. Is I'm just going to dip a little bit, grab a little bit of the dye stain. I'm just going to put a drop or 2 of the concentrate, And this is going to also help so I don't have to do a sandback, because the darker color, and by having this yellow down, I think that it's going to end up having a nice contrasting grain on its own. Yeah, that's turning green. So I'm going to need a couple of coats of the blue just to get past the green side of it. Alright, so I'm going to let this dry out because, you know, the wood can only take so much at one time. Well, I may as well do this piece right away, so hopefully by the time I'm done doing this piece, that piece will be dried out, and then we can get our next coat on there. I should have probably tried to do this color in advance. Coming back to this one, actually this one hasn't dried out yet, so I'm gonna let this dry, and if the second coat doesn't, you know, a second follow-up coat doesn't turn it to the teal color, one thing that I'll end up doing is I can just end up doing a sandback, and you know, that way I'll have some green contrasts in the deep grains, which I think would look kind of nice too. But then I can kind of start it over. Okay, so I'm gonna let this dry, and I'll be back in a little bit. All right, so this has had a chance to dry out a little bit. Now, what I'm gonna do, this is still a little bit greener than I want it to be. See, I want it to have like a bluish tint to it, so I'm going to actually put another coat on here, and hopefully it ends up changing over to the blue side. So basically what I'm going to do is do the same thing. I'm just going to, well, actually one of the things I'm going to do here, because somebody may be actually looking for a color similar to this, I'm just going to take the diluted version of the blue with the 7 drops to the 2 ounces of the lacquer thinner. See, I'm just going to put it on this side to kind of show what it would look like if it had sealer on it. It's not necessarily that's exactly the color it's going to be, but it would be pretty close to something like that. And just wetting it out a little bit. So that would be about what it would look like with this. Other colors that I have are lighter colors. They're bright, so I want to have a little bit of a contrast with it, and I think that this color is going to look really nice with the other ones that I have. I have all of the standard colors cut into boards that are similar to this, and a couple of other colors like orange and. But anyways, so here we go. I put a couple of drops of the blue concentrate onto here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on pretty heavy. I'm going to let it sit on here for a little bit as I go around the rest of this. And then I'm going to go back into the blue dye stain and apply, you know, draw some up, and then apply that on there. So that way I can kind of even it out a little bit and lighten it up just a touch. Yeah, see, this stuff is so concentrated, you almost have to have a little bit of the dye stain on there just to help it spread out, because otherwise it gets kind of sticky. And it doesn't flow quite as smooth. Okay, so that is that piece. Let that sit for a little bit. Draw a little more dye stain up. Put just a couple more drops of this blue on. I got this coated up pretty well. What I'm going to do now is come back to this other piece here. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of the dye stain. And I'm just going to go over this whole thing. Oh boy, that may have went a little bit darker than I wanted. Which is alright because I have this diluted version. The side here that I ended up doing with the 220 actually looks pretty close to what I'm looking for. But yeah, this one went just a little bit dark. But that's okay because, like I said, when you're layering, you have a lot of control, a lot more control than most of the time than if you just mix up formulas. I mean, mixing up formulas has its benefits as well, but layering it's an art within itself, and if you can get very good at layering, you can make some amazing color finishes that are very unique. Okay, so you see how dark this piece ended up going. I'm just going to take this diluted version now and get this cloth pretty wet. And now I'm just running over this top part because this is a little bit darker than I wanted. So this is it's gonna end up lightening it up just a little bit. I don't want to do too much because I don't want to lift all of the color out. So that's really come around. Oh, sorry, my camera doesn't always cooperate with me. Yeah, that's showing up pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish this up here. This slant is going to be glued together like so. So I won't really need to do anything further. I think what I'm going to do is just let these dry out. I'll reevaluate just to make sure that the color is pretty close to what I'm looking for. I didn't sand these back at all. So you can see that you don't always have to do a wash coat and sand it back, because sometimes, you know, the dye soaks in to the deeper grains naturally and will end up creating some highlights as well. A lot of times the darker colors will do that pretty well on their own. But it's just another option. You know, it wouldn't have hurt if I would have done a sand back on liquid dyes. They end up penetrating much deeper, so sometimes it just takes a little bit more applications to end up getting some of the color concentration, because it does end up covering more area, so there's less concentration of the dye in one area. So as you can see here, that's how far the dye is traveled. That's about how far that the liquid dye with a lacquer thinner would penetrate in. Now I would probably go a little bit deeper with, say, an acetone, just because the acetone is a much thinner liquid. From my experience, that this is going to lighten up just a touch. Well, I shouldn't say a touch. It's going to actually probably lighten up quite a bit. You know, maybe about 2 or 3 shades. So we'll come back and we'll take a look at it and we'll see how that looks, and then I can burnish it out and lay down some Spar Urethane, and we'll see how well this color's come about. All right, so this is dried out. This looks pretty close to the color that I'm actually looking to try to get. You know, so another thing that I was going to mention too is that you can end up diluting some of the yellow as well. So you can just pour this into a secondary container. So if you wanted to have a little more control, you could go with like a diluted yellow. I have some here. I'm not going to actually do anything with it just because the videos run pretty long already for something like this. But anyways, I just wanted to mention that. I'm going to just burnish this out now. Basically just give this a little wipe down. I'm pretty happy with this color, so I'm going to throw some of this Spar Urethane onto these pieces. I'm just going to give it a light misting, a very light misting on the first application. I'm not trying to saturate it or anything like that. Just a light little dust. That yellow. I'll spray that anyways. Okay, so I'm going to actually let this flash coat dry off, and I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, so this flash coat has dried off, and the color looks pretty good. I'm just going to finish these off. I'm going to just spray another coat on camera, then I'm going to go off camera. I'll probably spray another 2 coats. If you use gloves like these are nitro. I think I got these just on Amazon. You might want to be careful, maybe double up on the gloves if you plan on doing a lot of dyeing at one time, because the dyes in the dye stain form can eat through the glove. I've had it happen to me already, so I double up on it, and that way if the outer glove ends up getting a hole or something bleeds through it, then the second glove catches it. So alright, this is with the I guess the first coat after the flash coat, and what I'll do now is I'll just let this dry out, and I will apply follow-up coats, and I'll do that off camera so that way you guys don't have to suffer through more of this. So anyways, yeah, this is going to be a pretty nice color. I think it's nice and dark. I needed a dark color for my board, and I think after I'm all done with the putting this all together with the backdrop. Alright, so I'm going to try to finish this video up. These two here, this is my overall project here, so I just kind of laid them out to kind of show you why I ended up going the way that I ended up doing. So I have 2 colors here already that are kind of similar. It's kind of like a blue teal color to it. So that's why I ended up going with the green. These are the 2 pieces here that this video is about. This here was just one I already had done before, so that's why I went with kind of a greenish color to it versus the teal blue kind of look. So anyways, that's why I went a little bit darker. As you can see, this piece is already pretty bright the way that it is. So well, anyways, let's just go through some of this. This is just this is the brown with some of the yellow and the red that's been applied over the top of it. It's pretty easy color to get as well. That's for the just layering it. The blue here, this was a 1/4 teaspoon and 6 ounces of the alcohol, and then I applied a couple of drops with the dye applicator, or I mean onto the applicator with the dye, and then I ran over the top of it. This was just a 1 coat. Now you could deepen it up by putting a follow-up coat with the same process, but I didn't want to get too carried away with that. The green, I went with kind of an army green look to it. So basically what I ended up doing was I ended up making the yellow. All of this is the 1/4 teaspoon and the 6 ounces of the alcohol or lacquer thinner. I think the sky blue or the powder blue, I ended up using denatured alcohol, but the rest of them was with the 1/4 teaspoon in the the 6 ounces of lacquer thinner, and I kind of used all of those, that formula ratio, and layered for all of these colors. So the green, that was with 2 coats of the yellow, and then I went with, I believe it was 2 coats over the top with the blue over this. And like I said, it's an army green, so that's kind of what I was looking for. Now you can make several variations of all of these colors just by lightening up or a little bit with the ratios, or adding a little bit, like say the red, to make more like an emerald green, and so on and so forth. The purple here was I believe I did 2 layers of the red, and then I went over it with 2 layers of the blue, and then in the last one I went over it with a red again, just because I wanted it more of a reddish kind of purple instead of kind of like a violet, which was a darker, deeper type of color. This one and this one here are the orange. So if I pull the reds out, you can kind of see the difference. I know my camera has it's not the greatest camera, but it's a pretty good camera. I can't complain too much about it, but if you can see, sometimes it just has a little bit of trouble distinguishing colors, how I see it in person, but it's coming out pretty good actually. I think ever since I changed the background. So as you can see, these two here are the orange, whereas this one is the red. Yeah, I think that's showing up pretty good. So anyways, that's I believe I put down a red base and then I applied the yellow over the top. I don't think it really matters, but that was just the way I chose to do it. The red is just a standard red actually. And the brown, this is just the brown. Now this one, I believe I did do 2 coats. I think I did 2 coats on all of these really, for the standard color, meaning like the blue, which I'll get to next. And so the brown, this was 2 coats of the brown. There was 1 or 2 of these that I ended up sanding back. I believe the red I sanded back, and this blue, I believe I sanded this one back as well. And this is just the 1/4 teaspoon and the 6 ounces for the blue with 2 applications. I could have probably stopped at 1. I should have probably did one with just 1, but I just wanted it to be a little deeper color. The teal, blue teal, we already did. The black, some of these I also sprayed outside as well, and I think the wind kicked up and got some debris or something like that inside of them, so I apologize for that. I didn't wet sand these or polish them out or anything like that. A lot of people aren't going to end up doing that with their finishes, so I didn't do that, just so you can kind of see the results, you know, defects and all. So this here was just 10 drops of the blue in 4 ounces. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to look at my notes here. In 4 ounces of the 2 ounces of denatured alcohol, and then I applied 1 coat, I sanded it back, and then I added 2 more ounces, and then I just layered it. I believe I did about 3 or 4 layers, meaning of the same coat. So I just did 3 or 4 coats of this. That way I kept the color light. I had a little bit of contrast to it, but it wasn't very blue like it would have done here. And then I just applied a couple of coats to it. So that's how you can kind of get to another way that you can get to a sky blue as well. The yellow is just the straight up yellow. This one too, I believe I sanded back, so it's gonna have a little bit more contrast in there. I mean, you don't necessarily always have to do stuff like that. Sometimes the dyes will just end up doing that on their own, but I believe I did do that on this one as well. And then one last note, I did end up using this Minwax Hellsman Spar Urethane over the top of all of these. One note on that is that if you are going to use the Spar Urethane in the can, just to make sure that you keep your applicator clean. I noticed that when I didn't clean my applicator tip, it ended up shooting fingers, which means that it would end up having some streams in the vertical position instead of having a nice fan. So that's just one little note on that, and I really hope that you guys appreciated this video of layering, or at least learned something from it, or at least got a good reference to what some of these colors will end up looking like. And this is a maple wood, and it is a figured maple wood. So thank you guys again. I really appreciate it, and I will try to get some more videos turned around in a faster time period. I've just been very busy lately, so I really hope that this ends up helping out, and thanks you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it.